Hi, everyone. I think it's time to take over and to focus on a new topic. At the moment when we should start, I would make a couple of remarks. We are under pressure, as Mila said, very rich discussions. We are 14 plus 1. 2 moderators, 12 panelists, and Garry Jacobs is with us, and he would like to have an intervention during our session. A lot of questions. We speak about universities. This is a session specially organized for the World University Consortium, a very bold project, reinvented, if I may say this way, a couple of years ago, but because the reshaping of the World University Consortium is not my, it was not my responsibility. I was not part of this. I would like Alberto to start to speak about this, and after that I will have a short remark, and we'll start the run to have very focused intervention of 5 minutes, and hopefully we'll have some time at the end for discussion. Alberto, you have
Thank
the
you.
floor.
Hi, everybody. Very shortly, some, of course, were from the very beginning. Me and Garry had so many conversations about creating, as we did, a World University Consortium that would be a sister organization from the World Academy, and that would be also intentionally a different World University Consortium. We thought that there are even too many university consortium. We were, and I think we still are, more ambitious to actually create a consortium that would include not only university, but all the stakeholders to give a functional answer to what we see as the biggest problem. That sometimes education that has been growing, but is never enough, is growing in quantity, but not in quantity, in quality. We need education that would foster people that not only would be employable, but that would have the tools to see and to act in effective, sustainable ways. And sustainable is that they have to have a sustainable relationship with themselves, because often we actually are very educated, but very ignorant how to relate with the different part of ourselves, or how to take care of our health and well-being relationship, and the relationship with the natural, with the planet and other people. So we're still very ambitious, and we have several projects, and one of these would be actually one of the panel on the master program of creating a sustainable leaders. But to you, actually, to toss the idea how together we can give a contribution to this challenge, how to be part of the solution and not of the problem.
Thank you, Alberto. Because we asked you to be very focused, we proposed ourselves to be very focused as moderators. And I'll go directly to some questions which we agreed on, and we hope we'll be able to provoke you. I remember when I firstly learned about university, the idea of university, and the professor told us there is no one image, if I can use this word, for the same global recognized word, university. University has changed a lot, and we can speak more about the transformation of universities in the last 100 years. but the question is if the university has changed enough in order to face the future. And we have 4, let's say, big chapters that maybe we can reflect on them. One, it's a way university systems are organized around the world. And if this way of organizing universities is appropriate for the future. Certification. I was discussing with Garry a couple of weeks ago, I think, saying if I want to change the curriculum in order legally, in order the certificate to be recognized, I need 2 years. That means in computer science, fortunately, I don't have computer science in my university, you need 2 years to introduce something new. In 2 years, the new thing will be already old. Human central pedagogy. I am in a university field. Are the current universities around the world focused on this? And the last big chapter that we have on the table is transdisciplinary. I am not so old, but I am not so young. And I remember early 90s to speak about transdisciplinary, but early 90s, it was already an old topic about transdisciplinary. How can we face this if we consider the need for knowledge? And generally, higher knowledge are associated or used to be associated with universities. So these are just few questions that we want to tackle during our discussion today, but also we discussed in the World University Consortium for many times, and we try in the next week to come in front of the board of the World University Consortium, at least with some answers and directions, as Alberto said, how the World University Consortium can contribute to better understand the role of universities for the future. I'll stop here. I like Irina. I would like just to mention something which Irina remembers very, very well. The first, we know each other since 2007, but the first event that we attended together was a World University conference organized by UNESCO in 2009. Irina was an ambassador at that moment, and she attended as an ambassador in July. And so there are some milestones in the, let's say, history of higher education or in the current, our times. And Irina, as Director General of UNESCO, was able to consider the recommendations of 2009 conference, World Conference, and to implement. So Irina, you have the floor. Difficult task, 5 minutes, what we have to do.
Thank you very much, PRICOPIE, for this very kind introduction. I'm very humbled and privileged to be among so many prominent academics and the within, I would say, the celebration of the World Academy of 60. And I see Garry Jacobs there. I'm happy because I know that one of my predecessors, Federico Mayor, was also very, very active and still is. And I'm grateful to you also for inviting me to speak briefly about, from my experience at UNESCO and within the multilateral system, what I think is important. I will just probably speak on 3 issues. The first is about the Sustainable Development Agenda and the role of universities. I think it's important that for the first time, and I'm very proud of it, when we were working for the formulation of the goal number 4 about equitable quality, inclusive education and lifelong learning for all, for the first time the role of universities was there. In the previous time, there was always kind of a feeling that universities are something apart, that primary education is most important and secondary edit, but universities are only for national consideration. And now we see that universities are really the global leaders. And my first point is that universities should become really the global leaders into the implementing the Sustainable Development Agenda in all its 17 development goals. Because goal number 4 on education has 2 dimensions. On one side is education in itself, but on the other side is really the education for sustainable development. And it is very important. I think universities nowadays play even critical role in this area. They are drivers of transformation, and whatever they do, I think they are kind of how to put it, sustainability, sustainable development becomes kind of a new intellectual discipline within universities and an organizing principle of the universities. So I come to my second point. My second point is something that you did mention. This is about transdisciplinarity. I think it's really reflects the necessity of implementing this sustainable development. And Professor ZUCCONI just said that we really have to see how we relate to the nature, how we relate to the others. And this should be an organizing principle also more and more into universities. It's very much linked also to the putting human development into the center. I think that any education strategy nowadays must include in equal measure the deep consideration of the human, the way in which technologies, shifting economic powers and others are really affecting people. And this is when I come, because I'm, of course, very much contaminated with UNESCO's thinking. The great French intellectual who influenced UNESCO at those time, very much into the 20th century, Claude Lévi-Strauss, was saying, he said famously, recommending the unification of methodological thinking between the exact sciences and the human sciences, the speculations of the earliest geometers and arithmeticians were concerned with men far more than with the physical world. He famously said that Pythagoras, for one, was deeply interested in the anthropological significance of numbers and figures, as were the sages of China, India, pre-colonial Africa, and pre-columbial America. They were preoccupied with the meaning and specific attributes of numbers. So my point is really about interdisciplinarity. And my last point, because I know that time is very short, it is about putting indeed the human being, the human center, but it is about global citizenship education. This is the last target of goal number 4, target 4.7, which indeed is about something very important, to ensure that all learners acquire the knowledge and skills needed to promote sustainable development, including, among others, through education for sustainable development, sustainable lifestyles, human rights, gender equality, promotion of a culture of peace and nonviolence, global citizenship and appreciation of cultural diversity, and of culture's contribution to sustainable development. So I'm very passionate about sustainable development and global citizenship education, but I just wanted to flank the importance of what is needed in an education in terms of creating a sense of solidarity, of empathy, of sharing, of diversity, which I believe is so much lacking nowadays, unfortunately, with the shifting politics and geopolitics. So I stop here. I wish you well, and I'm very much looking forward to this debate, which I believe is very, very important nowadays. Thank you very much, PRICOPIE.
Thank you.
And so now, after this very eloquent sharing by Irina, we would hear Ralph Wolff. Ralph, you have 5 minutes, and can you please introduce yourself?
Greetings, everyone. Hi, I'm Ralph Wolff, and let me just say a little bit of background. I'm a recovering lawyer. Set up a law school in the 70s for the first ever law school for public interest and poverty lawyers. It's still in existence today, but my whole goal has been social change throughout my life, and I headed a regional accrediting body in the United States for 17 years, along with a number of other academic positions. Now, I've been really focusing for the last 4 years on what's called the Quality Assurance Commons that focuses on the skills that employers say are most needed and most lacking from college graduates, employability skills. So I want to weave that into my comments. I think there's a really wonderful opportunity to create something new and different through the World University Consortium as we're trying to figure this out. But my comments are going to be less about content and more about how we go about doing this. Let me just say, in the United States alone, Credential Engine has done a research project and found there are over 950,000 degrees, credentials, and certificates being awarded. If we were to offer a degree program, and that's just in the US, if you were to multiply that across the entire global academic and non-academic enterprise, you'd have to say there is quite a large number of opportunities available. The question I want to ask is, if we are to make a difference, what kind of difference do we want to make? And I don't want us just to create yet another degree program, one of a million or several million, that is populated with a set of courses. With anything I've learned in the last 5 years, working with over 70 programs of 40 institutions, is that we need to move beyond courses to what are the outcomes we want to produce, what are the skills and competencies, and what do we want our graduates in these programs to be able to do. And to that end, I would say that we need to focus on the competencies. It's not enough to just say we want to teach interdisciplinarity or global sustainability, but how will we demonstrate that in the way in which graduates go out and do their work? So my feeling would be just several comments. One, I would like us to be non-elite in the selection of students. There is already enough elite universities in the world. Can we go to refugee camps, to other places, high promise opportunities for students? Secondly, I'd like to say we need to define who do we want to serve. First, I want to say who do we want to serve after we define what skills we want to create and what outcomes we want to produce. I would submit that we should be focused on active learning and real projects that actually engage students in doing the kind of change. I'd like to see a program that's organized around disruption, not just preserving the past, because frankly, it's not gotten us where we need to go. Thirdly, I would say that we have a huge resource base within the World Academy with those that in the consortium that not only active learning, but there needs to be active mentoring of students, building networks, social networks, and building community in a whole new way around the projects that students do. A good model of this is Singularity University in the US, which has global citizens, but where students have to come, their whole goal is to produce a project that's going to make a difference in the world. And that's, and they create, and they talk, and their curriculum is organized around disruption and artificial intelligence, genomics, a whole range of things. But to me, it seems to me we want to create a disruptive model. I'll just say one other thing, a couple of other things. Faculty need to be not just delivering content, but active coaches. As the saying goes, from sages on the stage to guides on the side. But I think we need to build a faculty model where all of us become mentors, coaches, to develop the next generation of leadership, but disruptive, creative. Finally, I'll just say that our content needs to be not only on the things we've been talking about, but I would see the content would also need to be about entrepreneurship, not just having governments do it, but where can we find those kinds of hopeful and create those kind of hopeful action projects that are going to make a difference, so that we're creating not only the future leaders in terms of thinkers, but I would submit terms of doers. So love to hear, let me stop and say, love to hear everyone else's ideas. And I think it's very exciting to put this all together and to create what I hope will be a really unique and disruptive program that will serve the future of humanity with real outcomes and projects.
Thank you, Ralph. So I'll invite Marcel. He is the member of the board of the World University Consortium. We have had a lot of discussions, including the last 24 hours on email with different ideas. Marcel, you have the floor.
I think I have been professor at various universities in Europe, in the United States, China, and Japan. But my main functions were director at CERN in Geneva and at Max Planck Institutes in Germany, and particularly at the European Union for the education. I'm still very active there on the basis of, I'm still following with all the European rectors meetings. I follow the meetings, and I think that in general, like sustainability and many other topics like databases and artificial intelligence is already quite nicely integrated in the European system. That's my feeling. The only point what we do on a European basis, which I'm leading myself, is the topic about the transdisciplinarity. We are really planning to change the system in Europe, all over Europe, what we did also in the past with the Bologna Declaration and with other topics. We also would like to get a modern system, transdisciplinary. That means that there will be many faculties will not exist anymore, and we are building new faculties. But that is on a European basis, just as information. And I think all the other topics are quite well treated within Europe. In respect to the so-called my point at the WAAS WUC, I'm now there, one even of the executive directors at the WUC, and I am more or less thinking on the W, that is the world. Europe is well under control, and I think America too, and many other countries probably, they do their best. But I think that we are a world academy. That means that we are looking for world problems. Let the European, let the Americans, let them do them themselves. They have a lot of academies and a lot of institutions available. But in the world, it is for the time being really nothing available, which coordinates in respect to education and culture and everything which is related to that one on a world basis. How can the World Academy integrate Japan and China, and also to have then the close collaborations with the United States and with other countries into the world? And that is, I think, one of the main topics which I personally think which is of the top importance for the World Academy. Now, in the World Academy, it is an academy that should give advices to a number of bodies, advices to governments, advices to international organizations, to world organizations. That is, I think, the duty. And I think that is just what I think what the World Academy should do. Now, for the time being, I understood we had one meeting, the chairman was mentioning that. I'm also new there, and I really expect that we really make a kind of a strategy study. For the strategy study, I think we need you all. A strategy study is not simply possible to do by a few people. You need about 20 people. And I'm looking really, where are the active people in the academy who could help with great ideas? And then in the vision of I was just mentioning that is on a world basis. I'm also a little bit concerned with the fact, what are the great ideas what we need? We have to bring the world together. that you people talk to each other, that you people exchange from this to the other, particularly younger people. And in addition to that one also have close collaborations, that one is working on great projects which have been worldwide recognized. And I think for this one and how to do that, it would be very useful to have some useful help. Who can help us? The UNESCO is very nice, but UNESCO has no power anymore. You can forget UNESCO. There is no money available, there is nothing. And I think one had to look for all possible ways in order to get mechanisms so that our wishes to get the world academy, particularly between universities, that we can create that. How to do that? And then finally, if you have a good project, and I think we should have in the World University Consortium maximum 3 great projects. That's what I would like to see. 3 great projects. There's a project which I think should be to bring all these universities on the same system and to put them together. There should be a second one that is a kind of a coordination. What are the teen organizations or the teen bodies or so who could really help to realize it? And then the third one is to get it finally approved, that it is approved, that the system is accepted, and that finally governments are obliged or guided that really support that system. You could say that's absolutely impossible. That I understand. I got in my life various other topics. When I created the Bologna Declaration, people told me that I was crazy in 1990, and I got many problems from rectors of universities. But finally, today, each university in Europe is following that system. Now, I would really like to see how we could arrange that. Sometimes I'm dreaming. Once, when I was a young director at the European Union, I made once a proposal for a research project to the G7. That was to the President Mitterrand. And finally, they approved that the G7, and I can tell you that project after 20 years is still very active. It would be very useful to think on bodies who could help, and particularly bodies which we eventually could influence, so that things could be realized which is above what we are thinking today. Education on the world basis, I find that is fantastic. If the people in the world can talk to each other, have the same culture, that these people can talk on economics on a world basis, on politics, on all the areas, and they understand each other, is fantastic. I can tell you, it's not easy. 20 years ago, when we started in Europe, when there were Germans who spoke excellent French, they couldn't understand their French colleagues, although they speak the same language. It is even much more than the language what we need. And I think we need that on a world basis. I would not like to go further on that one. I've only a specific concern in the so-called the WAAS, and then particularly the consortium. That is Africa. I think we should do something for Africa. We cannot leave that alone aside. And we cannot integrate it into a project which is with the G7 or with the developed countries. That is not possible to put them together. We have to put that separately. But I think we should also devote special attention. And we should also find the ways, how could we bring Africa, and here as I only speak on the topic of education, how could we bring Africa closer together to all the other kind of areas? And then what are the so-called specific programs which you have to develop? I think here we have, and I think particularly in WAAS, the WUC should really come up with some brilliant strategic studies and action plans. And I really hope that we could achieve. But we need more people active into the system. We need more people who are in WAAS and who are prepared to take an active job, an active role. I see that a complete structure had to be created, a structure in which various parts have a job and that we can execute the job upon these requests, and that you also can do things, that topics which are impossible. I think we should follow a military strategy line. If we have to go around military people and we are in front of a river, now we have also to search a way in order to come through. We should also do the same thing. We will discover many difficulties, but I still think that we should make jointly a great effort, as this is, I think, the most important task from WAAS, that is the education and the research. And many other topics which we are doing is a duplication, and others are much better than we are, and we should not enter the field of duplication.
Thank you very much, Marcel.
Okay, I want to introduce a wise, powerful woman that has a very clear idea about education and value. Olivia BINA, please, Olivia.
Thank you, Alberto, and thank you all. It's really lovely to be here. I want to ask you to take half a minute to come with me to the 1619 on a coast of Ghana, and you are standing in front of a very long jetty. You are in a long queue. You are shackled in chains, about to board a ship that will take you to the so-called New World, and from then on, change entirely your experience of life. I want you to take that few seconds to be with me there in shackles, because I would like you to understand and feel the notion of shackles. Now, you may ask why, given that we are on the topic of higher education. And the reason is that I want to make a very simple point, but dear to my research at least, which is that I believe that since that moment and that project, a vast part of humanity is in some sort of shackles as a result of the dominant way of knowing that has so successfully colonized all countries and most of our higher education institutions. Now, this is an important point because I want to say three very simple things. Why do we need to change or do something about higher education? My answer to that is that we are very much part of the problem and that we hopefully can be part of the solution. What do I mean by problem? There are many, many ways we can talk about it, and there's tons of words out there, but I want to share mine. Mine is that the problem is a relentless destruction of life and of life's diversity. That to me encompasses all the crises we can list. And being part of the problem, by that I mean that universities, higher education systems continue to reproduce and consolidate dominant ways of knowing, meaning our shackles. In particular, I want to suggest that the main target of undoing the dominance is something that we call the human nature relatedness or relationship, which no matter how you slice it, we are we as humans, and then there is everything else. Life is not like that. The reason why we have a relentless destruction of life is that we continue to understand ourselves as separate. Now, this leads to what you could call the entrenched disregard for life of our socioeconomic and technological system, which I don't have time to discuss, but I'm sure you're all incredibly familiar with the many and multiple expressions of this. And that would be my what. What needs changing through higher education is how we look, admit, confront, make visible this disregard. Because solutions are not missing. We know how to change pretty much everything, but do we want to? And do we understand what it is that would drive that desire for change that is so deep and would require so much courage, but I would say, better said, humility on our side? And my third and last point is about how. So a lot has been written and said, and I see Pavel is here. They've contributed with a beautiful study. How is not a problem, is the intent that is missing or wanting or needs to be further defined and felt. But if I had to put words to the how, I would ask us to embrace something that could include the words of radical, meaning root and rooted, radical integral pluralism, so that that dominant way of knowing, which includes the epistemology, the ontology, and axiology side of things, can be for once and for all put aside, so that something new and different can arise from this incredible crisis times that we are facing. And I want to finish, I don't know if I still have half a minute, but just to say that I would like to discuss a little more the take in our final summary that was produced for the 60th anniversary, that our idea of a reliable way of knowing for a human-centered knowledge may need at least a more discussion about whether we want to put the human being at the center of that circle or something closer to all forms of life, because it would make a very significant difference to the whole point that I tried to suggest, which is that our dominant way of knowing is entrenching a certain divide. And until such time that that divide remains at the basis of everything we know and everything we, every way of knowing that we promote and disseminate, I do not believe that we can solve any of the interconnected crises we are confronted, but we can buy time. We can. Thank you.
Thank you, Olivia, and thank you twice, because instead of just speaking, you ask us to learn from an experience and to prove your point. You ask us not to understand, but to feel, to have empathy for people in shackles, and understanding that to realize and see our shackles and how we could free, and with a new paradigm that is based not only on knowledge, but also on respect, on empathy, not only for other human beings, but also for every living form of life. That is the new paradigm, either life-centered and people-centered, or bust. Thank you very much. Remus?
Yeah, Olivia said a lot of interesting things, but also somehow I was exactly the same questions after the intervention of Ralph. We have solutions. Are we ready to implement them? Or at least we might have some solutions, let's say this way. And probably the most important thing that we have to do is to talk. And this is a role of such an institution like World Academy of Art and Science. This is a role of UNESCO In fact, the first time, 70 years ago, UNESCO invited universities around the world to talk, founding International Association of Universities. And another very powerful platform of dialogue is International Association of University Presidents, when they meet and they talk. And here we have the president, and very nice to see my old friend, and for accepting to attend this session. Kakha, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Dr. PRICOPIE. And I would love to see all of you here this beautiful morning or evening or afternoon. And this is really, really a great talk tonight for me tonight. But maybe some of you, it's still afternoon or late evening. Anyways, I mean, when I was asked to speak about this panel, I was really delighted because so many hours we can speak about education, especially higher education. And as a professional and as a practitioner, I have 2 points which I want to make tonight here. Number one, as you know, we do have a large number of universities in my organization as of today, and we are ready to contribute to a World Consortium of Universities. And as we spoke already in Brazil 3 years ago, actually we are almost ready to start this new venture with several schools. And I'm still ready. I'm still, as a president of my university here in Georgia, we are ready to, and I have spoken with Garry many times about this. We don't need any accreditation, or we don't need any authorization from governments for starting this project. What we need to make this happen, and we have to start. And we have to start as soon as we can. And later on, some universities will join us, some maybe will leave, but it's going to be a great achievement for World Consortium, and it's going to be a good, great achievement for students, which are going to wait for us to do it. Because as we know, we already have said about this many times and many years ago. But I love to, again, to revive this idea and get started as soon as we can. This is first one. And second, please, higher education never, ever will be the same like 6 months ago, period. It's not going to happen anymore. We are absolutely different age of development right now, and we cannot afford to lose this revolution which comes to higher education. Because this pandemic and this COVID-19 changed everything, including education. And it's absolutely a terrible thing, but in higher education, we have a huge prospect right now to develop new ways and to include this high tech and with new tools for education. As PRICOPIE said this just from the beginning, we need 2 years for accreditation, 1 program in IT. But not anymore. It's gonna be changing game changing now. It's gonna be very fast, because everybody will be online soon, and or at least a hybrid education, and it can be a new possibilities for. And anyways, it's gonna be a lifetime changing coming up in next several months and in our field. Again, time is gone now for old style of education. New wave of higher education is coming. It's already in place, and everybody has to be changed. And we are going to change as well as an organization. And my last point is 2 things. So we have to do it as soon as we can in terms of regarding our new project, which will be supported by many universities in my part and part of World Consortium. And second, education is completely different as of today. When was like 6 months ago? Thank you.
thank you for your intervention. I think we'll have time for a second round of very short interventions, because you know, we have discussed about different possible solutions to reshape the higher education, but please consider two aspects: financing and equity. Because, you know, if we build a system that it's feasible just in some financial situations, that means this is not going to be someone for everyone. And we have a very, very serious problem here, especially in higher education, where just few people from poor area succeed to have higher education. But these are questions maybe you'll have in mind for the second round of intervention.
Dr. PRICOPIE, just 1 second, please. I want to just make one very small comment. Zoom webinar was impossible like 6 or 8 months ago, like we have right now. Are we agree all about this? Now we can do lecturing on Zoom anywhere in the world.
Yeah,
and the
I
cost
agree.
equity goes in second or third or fourth part now.
I agree. We'll
And
look
it's
to
going to be a
this.
revolution.
I'm sure we'll witness these changes.
Pavel, you're on. Please introduce yourself.
Thank you very much. It's my pleasure and honor to be together with you in this panel. My name is Pavel LUKSHA. I'm the founder of Global Education Futures Initiative. And actually the main idea of our initiative is to explore the future of education that serves not only the short-term needs of, let's say, immediate needs of economy, but this need for a more massive transformation of our civilization to address the massive challenges, the climate crisis, the challenges of global inequality and so forth. And of course, I really strongly resonate with many words that have been said in the panel today already, especially by Irina and Olivia, highlighting the need for education and universities in particular to serve transition towards a sustainable economy and society. And so I think when we look at the role of World University Consortium, it is not only to address the immediate challenges of university system, it's also to rethink what university is in the world after industrial civilization, the emerging new civilization that we are stepping into. And we evidently see a transforming mission of the university. We, of course, are aware of two critical missions that are education for employability and more broadly, this mission is evolving to become lifelong employability. So this is one aspect. The other aspect that is very evident is cutting edge research. A lot of discussion the last couple of decades around the idea of third mission, the development of society and economy, the development of territories. And I would like to introduce into our thinking the idea of the fourth mission of university. The fourth mission is actually that universities concentrate an incredible amount of knowledge and human ability to actually work with most complex challenges of our time. And this is exactly what the world badly needs right now. It needs to address the challenges of growing complexity of our society, the challenge of disbalances between the humanity and nature. And the global community of universities is essentially a system of nodes of thinking and practice that can become a governing system for the global transition towards a life-centered and human-centered civilization. And this is, I would say, a very high aspiration. We're not nowhere near that. But that can be something that drives us into rethinking what is the model and the role of universities. And also, of course, very pragmatic questions that Remus, you are talking about, like business model, like what are the stakeholders that need to be involved. All of these questions, when we aim for that higher aspiration, we really start to recognize how we have to address all of those questions differently. And so in the spirit of that transition, I think we need to, as a World University Consortium, to bring a number of catalytic projects that really can start shifting the paradigm within the university system, using the, let's say, the consortium of universities that already stepped in, that already are thinking along those lines. So I want to only bring, I have a lot of ideas, but I only want to highlight 4 of them that I think will be the immediate, will bring some immediate gain. So first of all, I think the conversation, like Remus, you're saying that we need a conversation. Yes, that conversation needs to be held, but the conversation needs to be held with the spirit of that, what is that future that emerges for universities? So we need to do it in the spirit of visioning and prototyping. And as Global Education Futures, we are having some of these conversations. For example, right now we are beginning a new conversation with a virtual university called Campus Co-Evolve on the potential of online collaborative learning for transformation, exactly from the point of how we can help human transformation and community transformation and territory transformation and economy transformation through online learning, where collaboration is happening, where new projects are catalyzed. So this is one of the things we really can create a future lab within a university consortium to do this kind of projects. The second thing that I think we also can do is called future skills. Together with World Skills, a movement that is focused on professional skills, we just completed a global project with 49 countries participating. What will be the needed skills for the 2020s? In the aftermath of COVID and other crises and the challenges that we are facing. And we see a lot of need for new skills, technological skills, but also human-centered skills, and also regenerative economy skills, universal well-being skills that need to be developed and widespread. And how can we connect with communities like World Skills that are very focused on professional education, but more focused on, let's say, vocational education. But in couple, when we speak with people from that community, they see universities as their main counterparts in bringing future skills to the economy widely. And there is a growing demand for this kind of work. Thirdly, I strongly resonate with the need to talk about not only Western perspective, different perspectives in what is the ways of knowing and what are the holders for this. There are different ways of organizing knowing, and there are different types of universities that exist in non-Western world. For example, we can think about Islamic universities that existed long time before Europeans one. Chinese universities that existed millennia before European ones. These are communities that want to step in, and they want to discuss how can we bridge the Western model of university with non-Western ones, and what can be the best ways of integrating knowledge with these different, let's say, civilizational models. And I think communities like BRICS, Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa, are very willing to step in and support the work of World University Consortium. And finally, we have a very successful approach that we have been practiced for the last year in the business school that I'm working with, Skolkovo School of Management, transforming universities across Russia. There are hundreds of universities that we've been working with in a kind of acceleration programs, where leadership teams of universities step into these programs. It's a kind of half a year to a year program where they go through a process of rethinking their own university by at the same time amplifying the work that they're doing. I think World University Consortium can do something like this, but at a larger scale. And this is exactly one of the things we can do to catalyze the change systemically. So these are my 4 offerings, and I'm happy to take on with you in practical implementation in any of them. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Pavel. And we gonna follow up on this idea and proposal.
So, Lloyd, if you are ready, I kindly invite you to have the floor.
Thank you. First, I just wanted to acknowledge and bring to Gary's attention, I think, a brilliant accomplishment already from the this meeting, which is the phrase "a planetary moment" in the title. I think it's one that we should hold on to. I think it captures the frustration of growing numbers of people around the world with the way things have been going, and the ability to foresee how things could work a great deal better, and an impatience. And in terms of marketing and the emotional resonance, it's a lot better than SDGs or more abstract ways of talking to the public. Yeah, I hope we can, in every packaging, say a planetary moment is a resonant theme that coalesces an emotional consensus behind all of our projects, and adds something that has been missing. For today's discussion, I was thinking back to our remarkable meeting at Berkeley at the beginning of global education discussions and the participation back then. I just wanted to give you a brief marker of appreciation and even celebration that I've checked, and the major purveyors that I'm familiar with, Coursera, EDX, and the Khan Academy, each are now over 100 million students each year, and they are all financially viable. Thank you very much. And now, coronavirus has been pushing this, but that's part of why I think we are at a moment, certainly in higher education, where people are saying, look, we know about Zoom, we've mastered it, we don't think it's impossibly complex and expensive, we can do some perhaps very remarkable things. So I just wanted to mention that we also have discovered through this vision of a number of courses that are not part of the traditional academic curriculum that have been among the most popular. One, Alberto, is about emotional well-being. In fact, it is the #1 course, the science of well-being from the Yale Psychology Department, now with 2.2 million students enrolled this semester, which is about, goes up each semester, but it's quite a remarkable need and a market that can now be met. I also would mention Johns Hopkins University, which has responded splendidly with a course for training people to be contact tracers for COVID vaccines for infections, and they now have 800,000 students registered this term from around the world. And for K through 12, the Khan Academy has over 100 million, but it has 46 languages covered through a remarkable network of translators. So I want to suggest several projects which I think we are ready for, and that would be a little bit ahead of their time right now, but that's exactly where I think the Academy should be, is to pull the pieces together for something that somebody ought to be doing. One is a citizenship week, a global planetary citizenship week that designated each year. Possibly, I would pick with BBC TV and some of, because they are global and they can put in the journalistic independence and integrity, perhaps with the Financial Times and others, and partners, to pick a core group of programs that could brief all people who want to be global citizens, like an annual stockholders report of saying, what are the numbers, who's accountable, how are we doing, why aren't we getting this solved, and moving it forward. But the core would not be a set of lectures or presentations, so those would be part of the signatures of data and accountability and progress, but also things like the presentations by each of the of NGOs about what they are doing, grouped by different area. It can use not just television, but also the internet, so that people can find out, if they care about things, where financial support, where volunteers, and progress can be made. And I think it would be in each of the special development goals, sort of a remarkable way to bring through UNESCO and its consultative bodies an involvement of the civil society directly into a global discussion that really helps good ideas to meet up with supporters and build momentum with a degree of visibility. So a lot more to be said about that and the creativity that would be possible if, as a catalyst from a number of leading organizations who want to push this. But I think we have people who are ready and would like to link up internationally and to help hold people accountable. Thank you very much with some metrics. Second area I wanted to mention very briefly is business school. I think we're still somewhat deficient on that in terms of curriculum. We are going to need a great deal of fast economic growth coming out of the coronavirus to make up time and build hope and enthusiasm. Being able to train people, particularly to be entrepreneurs, is a remarkable dimension if you can pull it off, or if the Club of Rome can pull it off, or somebody can pull off that dimension of a global business school. I think it's very worthwhile doing and will help us a great deal. But if you can help people, just young people starting up saying, well, how can I make money?
Hello, Lloyd.
I hope that's something that could even be mentioned in Citizenship Week, but in terms of brokerage discussions with people who might know how to put up a global business school that really helps with the entrepreneurial question, would be remarkably interesting psychologically. Two more quick suggestions. One is pre-med. I think it is one of the perhaps areas of agreement for strengthening all universities and educational systems in all countries, that we want a strong curriculum for the world future and for their country's future to identify talented and interested students throughout the country who would like to go into those whole realm of occupations and contributions. We have ample evidence that the percentage that people are willing to spend out of growing GDP for medical services is higher than in other sectors, and the Gates Foundation will support nursing education and many others. But I think in terms of some catalyst for future planning, and that we are on the cusp of transformations in digitally based medicine, which can bring down costs and require new educational backgrounds. I won't go into that directly, but two more quick points. One is on cities. The Bloomberg philanthropies are spending billions now on link-ups of all the world's megacities, which is where many people will live. Those are the locations of many problems. That kind of civic planning initiative, let's call it a beautiful cities movement or planning movement, is a kind of engagement I think that could be fostered as well with UNESCO and the World Academy to look at, for example, architecture and city planning. And okay, I was going to mention the Global Divinity School, but I'll stop now. Thank you.
And thank you for your intervention.
Janani, a wonderful colleague, and actually two wonderful colleagues. One, she's very good. Another, she's very good because it's helping me and everybody else. So two thanks.
Thank you, Alberto. Thank you, Alberto. I'm Janani Ramanathan, and I'm working in the field of education research. In 2013, some of us at the World Academy asked ourselves this question: If we were to design an affordable system of world-class education that is accessible to everyone, everywhere, how can we do it? That would have been one extraordinarily stupendous task, but it also happened to be the time when something new was emerging, the massive online, open online courses, the MOOCs, which Lloyd just referred to. Classrooms expanded from tens of students to tens of thousands online. So that was when we asked, why not include the whole world, and founded the World University Consortium. Among the various aspects of education that WUC focuses on, I'd like to focus on just one point now, the delivery of education. Online education, we know, is far from perfect, but the pandemic has showed us that it is an essential part of our future. So while there is need for qualitative improvement in online delivery of education, I wish to focus today on the quantitative need that there is in large parts of the world and how online courses can meet that need. An Indian doctor recently said in an interview when he was asked about vaccine hesitancy in the country that vaccine hesitancy is a privilege of the first world. Now that reflects a quite complex reality, but the same thought can be applied to online education as well, with 20% of the population illiterate, 75% of our youth not enrolled in college, and the acceptance rates in some Indian universities less than 2%. Online education can be the lifeline. This is true for several other parts of the world as well, and in different situations in developing countries, in societies where girls and women have constraints, in conflict zones when adults need to reskill, and during a situation such as this pandemic. UNESCO projects that across 180 countries, 24 million children who were enrolled in school may not return due to factors that were caused or aggravated by the pandemic. This will be in addition to the 258 million who were already out of school in 2018. We can bring all of these children back into the education system through an affordable, self-paced distance education. Only 66% of the countries have achieved gender parity in education. Online can bring in more girls. In conflict zones, 27 million are out of school. This can give them another chance. Youth from rural areas are more than twice as likely to be out of school than their urban peers. Distance education enabled by technology can bridge this gap. There are several other issues here, no doubt about it. We need a better infrastructure, for example, to make this happen. Recently, there was news of a girl in a Malaysian village who was sitting on top of a tree and writing her exam using her phone because that was where she could get a strong internet connection. But even with such constraints, great things are taking place. In an Ebola treatment center in Sierra Leone, there was a case of 40 healthcare workers who took an online course on Ebola that provided essential knowledge of the disease, all taking turns using a single phone. So distance education basically is not new. There were postal courses in the 19th century and radio and television broadcast of lessons throughout the 20th. Only now technology has made it so much more possible to design that affordable system of world-class education accessible to everyone everywhere, which is the idea behind the founding of the consortium. So I believe if we look at a model that combines communication technology with physical classroom interactions where possible, we will have a model that meets both the qualitative and quantitative needs of our youth. There will be 3.5 billion youngsters by 2030, and we will need about 70 million new teachers to educate them. And UNESCO has declared that in a world facing a learning crisis, digital learning should be an essential service. WUC can be one of the stakeholders that facilitate this essential service and contribute to the global effort to meet SDG 4. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, now with patient, our final speaker is ready. Yehuda, you have the floor now, and please. Yehuda, you have the floor, and after that it's Garry. Please introduce yourself and unmute the mic.
Katzman, and I work for the YK Center and SDG Israel. I'm here to represent Professor Yehuda KAHANE, Fellow and Treasurer of the World Academy. Professor KAHANE is here with us. However, he is unable to speak, so I will be speaking on his behalf. Over the past 2 centuries, capitalism has driven substantial economic growth. However, this growth has not been responsible for the thrivability of our planet in terms of society and the environment. This economic model now threatens the continuation of the human species on planet Earth. A basic economic principle is that everything is based on people's desires to have more money. Basically, that can be taken to mean that the economic metric is the only one running the show. The basis for our system is a limited supply of land, capital, and labor, and thus less limitations on our systems. Capitalism has other flaws, such as no perfect competition, the false representation of natural resources in supply and demand, and economic externalities. This is what led the Nobel Prize laureate Joseph Stiglitz to argue that the invisible hand is invisible because it is not always there. This means that neoclassical economics must make slight changes to what is valued, like multi-dimensional metrics, economic, societal, environmental, and consciousness factors. In short, ESEC, E-S-E-C. New metrics should be added to our understanding of economics. This can work if there will be an approximation or new factors and metrics that will be incorporated into our economic model. A possible change would be a redefining of the national accounting system to bring up the positive and the negative elements of our economies. That can translate social and environmental benefits into monetary terms. The SDGs could be the basis for such a model until other models catch up. The Sustainable Development Goals, SDGs, represent trillions of dollars in investments, and most of them are long-term. How can we obtain the necessary funds? The only source of long-term investments are pension and insurance funds, including Social Security. On the one hand, the pension needs long-term investments to back up their commitments, and on the other hand, they must create pensions for millennials. This is a perfect match. Each dollar invested in the SDGs will not bring high yields because of externalities that are not taken into account. The prospective investor only receives the economic profits, while others, the government or the public, get the environmental and social benefits. The investments are more in environmental and social fields and only partially in economic fields. If the SDGs become the business of governments, then they could facilitate an approximated solution. Governments must do this, as they manage the SDGs and the regulation. If each country issues a special long-term bond, which can cover SDG investments with a high yield, it may suffice to return a pension or Social Security to the entire population. It can be easily transformed to a privately owned sector through insurance companies and pension funds. This way, we finance the SDGs and create a pension and jobs for millennials and future generations.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Before to invite Garry to have the floor, please allow me for 1 minute or 90 seconds to share with you a dilemma. I used to be Minister of Education in Romania for 2 years. I used to be Deputy Minister, Secretary General. However, I used to work almost 15 years in different positions in the ministry. And generally, when I attend this kind of meetings, I find out a lot of new ideas, new solutions, but it's not clear for me. If I would be today again Minister of Education, my question is, what should I do? Because I can apply immediately these solutions, or some of the solutions are already implemented, but they will apply to Romanian citizens. Or now, here we are talking about a global approach to higher education. Globally, we have a lot of people out of school or out of education. So the question is, if I am to reshape the accreditation body, and I'll be accreditation indicators, not body, and I'll be interested to see the opinion of Ralph, I'll do it in half a year, in 1 year, in 3 months, through changing the legislation in Romania. But if I am to apply a Romanian small good solution globally, that will not possible. And if an Indian or US method of doing something in higher education to apply to Romania, it will be more difficult. So I think our challenge today is to try to give a solution that will help people across the world to benefit from good practice from specific places. And that it's applicable to curriculum, to credential, to finance, to university professors. I cannot invite someone to have a class as a professor in my university if that person, never mind how great, Bill Gates cannot teach in my university according to Romanian academic standards. So these are the questions that we have to answer if we want to have a global solution to a global challenge. I'll stop here my thoughts, my dilemmas, and Garry, please, you have the floor.
I would just like, first of all, to thank all of you because this was a fantastic discussion. Of all the ideas that I wished, I had a wish list of topics that we would discuss today. You have raised all of them and raised the questions and also pointed to some of the solutions, and there's no way. I would just like to say a few things apart from the thank you, which is the most important. I'd like to go back to what Lloyd said about a planetary moment. I think we should think of it from that point of view. I'd like to go back to what Kakha said, that education will never be the same. And what we've heard from Ralph, not only today, but in other wonderful discussions with him about how already the credentialing issue, which Remus has rightly mentioned as critical, is already changing. And I don't think we are here to talk about incremental changes. I think we're here to really think about what the new paradigm would be that could answer the question which Janani asked. She didn't tell you where. She asked it in front of an audience at the United Nations office in Geneva in 2013 as to how you would create such a system. And we've been asking that question for the last 7 years. And the only clear answer we've received is you wouldn't do it the way we're doing it or planning to do it or talking about doing it now. We need a new paradigm. And I think many elements of that have already been touched today. Irina mentioned the essential part of transdisciplinarity or multidisciplinarity. Olivia about the need for new thinking and getting the right thing at the center of the diagram, which is a lovely discussion to have. I'm eager for it. And Janani talked about the online delivery, and so many elements have come together. One thought, I wish we had 5 days for this topic because we have enough material for it, and maybe that's the next thing we should do in World University Consortium. But I'd say for the moment, supposing we remove ourselves from the equation of who's going to do anything and ask ourselves what really should be done, I think we have the brain power, the richness of experience, intelligence, and experience to draw up that conception to answer the question that Janani asked in 2013. And we will get a very different answer today than we did then. In fact, the technology, we didn't have Zoom, but we had WebEx and other things at that time. The technology existed to answer that question 7 years ago, maybe not with the broadband speeds that we have today, but it was not the problem of the technology. It was the problem is we were asking the existing educational systems to change totally inside out. And if you remember at the Berkeley meeting in 2013, we had the Dean of Online Education from Stanford. and Stanford, which was the birthplace for Udacity and Coursera. And we asked him, what type of support do you have within the university at Stanford for going online? He said 80% of our faculty is either terrified or deadly against this. And now what happened? COVID came along and changed all the rules, because there's no university that could afford to say, we won't do this, we won't teach this way. It's broken the barriers, I think. I think what we're missing today is a really clear conception of what the alternative delivery system could be. Not that everything goes online and we abolish how many tens of thousands of colleges and universities. They play a different function. Not with the existing kind of pedagogy where we're mainly using the online just for one-way transmission of information. We've had experience to show that this online can be as interactive or more interactive than much of the classroom is, but we know we need social contact and all. Supposing we just put the question before us now, can we come up with a master conception, whether it's for a national level model or a global level? And I just, one more point is that what already I think the idea of national level credentialing is already disappearing. We've got companies in Amazon and FedEx in India who say, we don't care what the national credentialing is. We want people with these capabilities. And if you're an entrepreneur, if you want employable skills, or if you want to start your own company, you don't need national level credentials. You need national level credentials to work in a national level school to perpetuate the existing system. So I think if we accept the fact that what Kakha said, education is never going to be the same, but what is it going to be? Can we come up with a viable model that makes sense to us? I think we have the elements of it here, not dreaming, real elements. And just one more point, you know, when Janani spoke at Geneva, it was the basis of a report that UNESCO had written when Irina was the DG, in which they talked about you'd have to create five universities the size of Harvard every week for the next 15 years just to meet the next 100 million students who are standing in line. And even in India, the education is unaffordable. The price that people are paying for except for the government, it's just unaffordable. We can deliver it. We can deliver the world-class faculty at the lowest possible cost. And I think all these issues are, let's not think of what we can do today. Let's think about what we can conceive today in a way and present it as a challenging model to the world. And then we'll think about what our role is or others' roles are, because governments are desperate, especially in the developing countries. Universities are desperate everywhere because the economics are not working anymore. We have to look at a model that works for the students, that works for the governments, that works for the universities, that works for the faculty. And my last point, I've already exceeded my time, is if we get that new system, look at the educational resources that the world has today that we're not utilizing. The retired teachers, the experienced people in every field and every profession who would love to spend their years, their mature years, sharing their experience with each other and not just teaching a textbook, being mentors and everything. We're using a tiny fraction of the knowledge resources or the educational resources that we have in the world. There's no shortage of that. We just have a very inefficient system because it was perfectly designed for 100 years ago, and it's not able to adapt quickly enough for obvious reasons. So why not come up with that conception, something that makes sense to us? And I think we have the capability, if we get that conception, and I think it's right within reach with all of the perspectives that have been raised today, that we can reach out to others. And I wouldn't whatever its limitations, I would not write off UNESCO. I think UNESCO has a tremendous role to play in future, maybe in a different way than it's being done today. We have the resources and we have the connections. Let's use it. So I just want to thank you all for really stimulating discussion.
Thank you very much. It seems that I was too optimistic, saying we have a time for a second round. I shared with you some of my concerns and dilemmas, so I think it's fair, Alberto, to conclude and to have the final words for this session. And thank you once again to everyone. Alberto?
Thank you for the contribution of everybody, including the wonderful people from the support team of WAAS. I agree with what has been said, and I want just to add that we have ample scientific proof that people-centered, student-centered, active learning gives better results, not only in the subject matter, not only also online, but helps people in critical, and that was Irina underlying, critical thinking, being a active citizen. So we can build a sustainable education for a sustainable future, but there are some barriers. Together, we can, work to overcome that barrier, and probably we should start with some pilot project that, and with the help of everybody, we can give the word. We don't. It's not us. We don't want to, have a trademark. We want to empower everybody to do the obvious. Let's stop being part of the problem and let's try to be the solution of this planet.
Thank you. See you in the next sessions.